Good morning, everyone just joining us. We're going to do that funny, awkward moment where we pause and wait for people to come on into this webinar. This is the future of the live event industry. We're going to be talking to Paul Carey from TicketCo in just a minute. So as everyone shuffles in for this virtual webinar, as everyone does, awkwardly at the back, it's not like real life when you creep in a bit late and we all stare at you. It's okay to be slightly late. I'll introduce myself. My name is Steve Hargrave. I am a broadcast journalist, and I also am an arts correspondent and, of course, a failed musician, if you can see the guitars in the background. And I also enjoy going to lots of sticky floored venues for music events. So like many of you, I'm missing those right now. That's what we're talking about today, you know, where gigs are at, where they've gone, and also more importantly, where we're heading and turning things onto a digital platform. Previous webinars on here are focused more on aspects and practical elements of this whole process. Today, we're going to give a more direct focus on the question of where we are and where we're going, because we know it's changing on a day-by-day basis. Please do put questions in. We can see them pop up, excuse me, and we will answer those at the very end once we finish this discussion. Right, so we're staring at a crystal ball, so to speak, metaphorically today, and that means we need a Mystic Meg who has his finger on the pulse, and that's why we have the man to talk to, Mr. Paul Carey from TicketCo. Good morning, Paul. Give you a bit of a build up there, like I'm introducing you at a live event. We'll put some music on and some lights on you. A pleasure to speak to you, Paul. Maybe it's best to begin with if you just introduce yourself for those people who don't know you.
Sure. I'm Mystic Meg. No, I'm Paul Carey. I'm a key account manager at TicketCo. And yeah, I've worked in the events industry for 25 years or so. Started out working for the Rolling Stones. Then worked on a lot of big awards shows such as the Brit Awards, Enemy Awards, and then ended up as general manager for Rewind, the 80s music festival, so touring festival. And down the line, I've also managed artists from Shirley Bassey and worked with people like Elton John and David Bowie. So an interesting career so far, but landed at TicketCo. And yeah, it's we're entering into a kind of brave new world.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just looking for those names you dropped on the floor, just down there, mate. Great career. So many great acts that you've actually worked with as well. David's on the wall behind me. I think a good place to start. Me and Paul was talking about this earlier this week, and there was a quote actually in an interview from the Bob Letzet's podcast where Mark Geiger, he's the former head of WME and the founder of Lollapalooza, so you know he knows his stuff when it comes to live events. This week he said he didn't foresee there being any new events, festivals in 2021. He said they might return at the very end of 2021, but more likely 2022, which is obviously a very depressing thought on a personal level, and also from the industry point of view, because so many jobs are at stake really in terms of these companies and businesses. We need to look at a new way of doing things. TicketCo, of course, were there from the very start when this all kicked off. Maybe you can explain how you started that transition from being a physical ticket company to starting to move to online streams.
Sure. Our business is kind of largely split into three areas. We work a lot with sports clubs and sports stadiums, providing ticketing and cashless stadiums. So anything inside the stadium we can process through our payments platform. We also work a lot with activity venues, so time slots for going and playing crazy golf kind of games and stuff like that, trampoline parks. And then we also work in the music industry in festivals and events, etc. But at the time of the lockdown, when that started in March, we realized that we had two options, or an option, either to bury our head in sand and hope that it will go away rather quickly. But TicketCo isn't like that. So we pivoted on the axle and realized we actually had a huge opportunity with the platform we have. And we have an amazing team of developers. So we put them to work and we started developing TicketCo TV, which is the live streaming platform, which is now out there and helping venues, artists, and events and event organizers to get back on their feet. And that was really the idea behind it. Was what do we do to help event organizers. A lot of the people within the company, including myself and other people, we've all been event managers. We've all run events and organized events. And so we know the plight that people were in. So we decided we had to do something. And that's where TicketCo TV was really born.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because we've had live streams, we've YouTube and Instagram. We've been used to that anyway, the way things were before all of this happened. The big question, I suppose, how do you get the trust, the idea that fans now should pay for that kind of content? I know you're talking about this idea of adding exclusive comment, but it's really about exclusive content, sorry, and it's really about the idea that live streams are no longer a gimmick, but a necessity.
Sure. I think in the past it has been that it's like, okay, yes, we're going to be live streaming this show as well if you can't be there, but it was a bit of a kind of a token gesture, really. But now the old norm is gone forever, and the new norm is what we're calling hybrid events, and that is it's a huge step in a different direction. It's been forced on people by a lockdown. But it's where we're going with it. And it takes a huge leap of faith for the consumer to part company with the money for a gig, which they don't know whether it's going to actually appear on their screens when it's said to. So we've spent a lot of time with the TicketCo TV platform, ensuring that the tech behind it is rock solid. And the main kind of USP that exists there is that with us, the tickets purchase and the streaming is on the same platform, so that means there's no fragmentation, and it means it just doesn't fall over. So customers have confidence that there'll be no issues, and they're going to get what they pay for.
It's interesting, that tech question, isn't it? Because we've seen, live stream events, and I know we've both looked at on Twitter almost immediately after the ones that we've already had. Say, for example, there was a Nick Cave event I know that was done last week. The tech can be a hurdle because your average gig goer isn't necessarily the type of person, who would definitively know how to get it on their phone, on their laptop, on their big TV in their lounge. And of course, I guess the idea from your point of view is you want to encourage people to be able to sit there with a big TV and almost feel like they are actually in the venue again.
That's right. I think we kind of realised that the way this is going to be consumed by the customer was not going to be on the phone. It's not going to be on an iPad, most likely. It's going to be on the big screen. So we spent a lot of time developing the tech such that it can work on Apple TV, and it can work on Android, and it can be Chromecast. All of the ways that people are really getting content onto their TVs at home. And it brings up the idea of the party at home. And I think the party at home for live events such as this is really going to be part of the future. And it just means that also that gigs will never be sold out. So it gives everyone more opportunities. So, but with the tech, we really spent a lot of time making sure that was rock solid.
Yeah, the interesting thing, you mentioned it back then, the idea of this added content. I know you've done some events already, a comedy festival where you had this idea. It's the idea of making it more than just watching. It's about almost experiencing and being a part of something. Can you explain a bit about what you did with the comedy festival and how that might be incorporated into future events?
Sure. I think so. Event organizers have got to get and are getting really even more resourceful than they normally are. I mean, these are resourceful people who put on events, and they're thinking about the location, like the Nick Cave gig, which was at the Alexandra Palace, I think, and making a real spectacle of it when you can't be there in person. I think that's a really important element. Make it that it's really well shot and looks really nice, and put the production element into it. But then as we, like you said, with the comedy festival, which is called Just the Tonic, we partnered with them very early on, and they were very early adopters. And what they've done, which is absolutely brilliant, is there's an upsell function. So we tried it out on their first show, and they basically did it. We connected them up with a drinks brand, and you could order a crate of beer, which would arrive the day before on the actual show on the Saturday night. And it just meant that people can take the weight of having to think about organizing everyone and the drinks and everything else, and create an event at home. and I think it was hugely successful. They sold, I think, ticket buyers, 56% of ticket buyers bought a crate of beer. So the upturn in revenues there just by doing that is fantastic, and that's something which you can really can't do on other platforms.
I'm surprised if the beer got delivered the night before. I wonder if there were some people who didn't last until the day itself. But it does avoid the problem with the queue at the bar, which is one big thing everyone's been saying. At least the toilet is near and the bar is very near, so there's no queues. I want to move on to almost section 2 of this chat, and that is in a way peering towards the future. Why streaming matters. We've sort of touched on what you've done and these changes you've made. There are quite a few key elements as to why this really does matter to many people across the industry moving forwards and looking across perhaps over this year or next year as we move on. Every day, of course, we're watching the news and things constantly changing. I think that's an understatement of the century. But one thing is clear, I suppose, that this idea of streaming, like you say, isn't just going to be for now. If we go back to that Mark Geiger quote and think that gigs might not return until the end of next year or indeed the year after, there is a need, isn't there, for, in a way, the hybrid event. I think you mentioned that word, this idea of a hybrid event. Perhaps if we go to gigs where only, say, 100 people can get in, there's going to be many others who can't get in. So you foresee this to be something that even when gigs appear in a very small sort of physical manifestation on a much sort of short, lower scale, with only a few fans there, you still see a place for streaming being part of that system?
Yeah, it is. The hybrid solution is not going to go away, and it's going to be part of the new norm as we see it. And the coronavirus has meant reduced capacity. If you have even a venue for 500 people, maybe you're going to be able to fit 100 people in physically into the venue. So what do you do to pick up the rest of the revenue that you'd normally be earning? Well, the solution is to go online and to live stream the event. And that we're going to see really become the normal now. And gradually, as things return to something like we knew them before, it will just stay in place. It will be there, and people will accept that they can go and see something online. A lot of people don't necessarily. They're interested in an artist or a show or an event. Maybe they don't like flying. Maybe they don't. Maybe they just are semi-interested. That it's going to be such that people are going to pick up the option to live stream, and gradually, sure, capacities will increase again. But I think Mark was probably right that events are going to be like this for quite some time, and I can't really imagine standing in a field with 50,000 people next summer. When I think about it, in all honesty, as much as I'd love to be there with a pint of cider or whatever it is, enjoying that experience, I just don't know whether we're going to get this as soon as people hope.
Yeah, it's really interesting, like you say, isn't it? And we've sort of see with all elements of things that are being reopened. Obviously, we know pubs, restaurants, that there is this worry, of course, that rightly so, a lot of people are still very afraid to be in big groups or to go even into a pub or anything. So it's going to take a while for that actual trust for people to actually go back to somewhere where there's a big audience. I suppose that's that kind of leads on to this question, which is in terms of the industry as a whole, what's required? I mean, how hard is it? You know what the industry's like. People have talked about the death of the music industry and amongst this. Music won't die. Of course, we know that. It's been through things before. But how do you foresee that kind of idea that the industry is adapting? Or how easy do you think it is? Is there this kind of element that they are trusting this leap of faith almost, and that they're starting to listen to these concerns?
Yeah, I think that the music industry is pretty quick to react, and the event industry is a quick reactor. And people are starting to really think about how, in all reality, this is not going away, and that this is the new normal. We've seen it a little bit with the drive-in shows, which have been the first step in the right direction. But now we're getting a lot of people talking to us from artists and artist management companies and event organizers, festival organizers, looking to the future and thinking that this must be part of the solution. It's not going to go away. And so what does that mean? It means that there's kind of a different kind of investment required, which is a tech investment. that can be small. It doesn't mean that you have to go and buy a 10 camera kind of rig or anything like that. You can get this started really easily with the tech that's around, or even on your mobile phone. Any artist can do this. Any event can do this, and really the platform is so flexible and agile that you really just have to then plug into the TicketCo and TicketCo TV platform, and you are broadcasting to your customers straight away.
And that ease, I suppose, like you say, that the TicketCo TV platform offers means it's kind of open to all. And I think this sort of brings us on to sort of almost this final point of summing this up, is that the different people that are affected by this, whether it's venues, events organizers themselves, artists themselves. I mean, let's look at the artists first of all, because Damien Keyes, who runs a great YouTube channel on the music industry news, has obviously been very talkative about a lot of these issues facing musicians themselves, who are very small and are facing a very uncertain future. And a lot of the talk at the moment seems to be about the insurance costs, because obviously events, even when they can go back up, will they happen? Because insurance costs are going to be huge. And a lot of the big event organizers are talking already about shoveling some of that cost back to the bands to pay for their accommodation, maybe take a bit of a cut on revenue, or put the entire risk of going to an event on them. And as we know, small bands will not be able to afford that type of risk. Damien Keyes, he spoke about this and said about how the artists need to take back control with streaming, be the puppet master rather than be the puppet, which is a very nice sort of analogy about it. Is that what you kind of foresee this idea in a way that you are sort of going to enable people to take back that power?
That is really what the whole platform's been built on, is giving venues, giving artists and event organizers the power, and that's through technology, to take the bull by the horns, and their careers by the horns, and their businesses by the horns, and get out there and start bringing in revenues again. It's really an enabling innovation that we've come up with, and this is a hybrid solution going forward, and it's a very impressive thing that we have achieved here, I think. And we in our hearts we have the businesses in a central focus, thinking about them and how they can get back up running. And artists are much beleaguered, and we want to help those artists out, so that there are headliners of the future who can grace stadiums around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like we say, music will survive. It goes through all these things. In a way, art is always encouraged in a way by events like this, a lot of stimulus for creation and things to come. So it's all about thinking on your feet and adapting and adjusting. And I suppose that's where this fits in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've made it very simple to use, and there's actually no contract. It's a free registration, and we're encouraging people to speak to us, and we'll help you get your events up and running.
Excellent. And that's whether it's artists, event organizers, anyone on that spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. Large and small.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'd like to take any questions anyone has. You can pop them into the chat here on this session and ask us anything that you want to about what we've had while we've got Mystic Meg sat there to talk about it. I've had a couple of questions already to just to start. So I'll just go through these few here. Jack says, any thoughts, Paul, on when you think gigs might return? We've obviously heard a few theories on that. And do you foresee the idea that sit-down venues, might return before we go back to the smaller ones? What are your kind of personal thoughts? Have you heard anything from within the industry?
I think venues, the smaller venues are the ones who are going to struggle the most. Obviously, with less capacity, it's most difficult for them to return. Slightly bigger venues, maybe a 1,500 or 2,000 seater venue, there is an opportunity to, by spacing, seats, allocation, etc. There's an opportunity for them to get up and running at a limited capacity, probably easier than the smaller venues. But in terms of when all this can happen, I mean, I don't think we're going to see we're seeing a slight return now with theatres reopening. I think that'll be mirrored in other venues. But I don't think we're going to see this happening very probably not this year. And I think it will be tentative steps into 2021 in the festival season, and that's why the kind of hybrid solution is going to be imperative.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Jack, for that question. Got another question from Dan. He says, "What about the venues themselves?" This is another interesting element, actually. Do you see potential to work with venues? Because obviously, some venues are folding. There's big question marks over how long they can carry on. Have you talked to any venues? I mean, I guess the idea with your framework is that a venue themselves could hold an online event, to help them to get money and work that way.
Yeah, we are. We're talking to lots of venues, whether it's music venues or theatres across the country. They're all looking at the solution, and that's why they're coming to us, because we are the solution. Yeah, large and small. So from the Water Rats in King's Cross to the Colston Hall in Bristol, there's a whole kind of spectrum of the kind of venues that we are talking to.
Yeah, and one little question from Jane says she's encouraged by the events that have happened so far and the reception that it's had online. Like we said, some of these events have generated almost headline news, I suppose. Just ask you, has that kind of enthused you as a company, about what you're doing? That must be really positive to see that these events are starting to become talked about event moments, like remember gigs used to be as well.
Yeah, it is vindication. We've made the right decision, and we created something which has a real need and is actually doing something good to rebuild the fabric of our society, which is historically based on music and culture, theatre, and live events. So yeah, we feel like we're doing something really good, and hopefully this is a positive spur in the right direction as we go into the future.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your questions, everyone. And Paul, thank you very much for gazing into the crystal ball of the music industry. I did offer to end on a song with my guitar, but Paul says that I can't do that, so I won't subject anyone to that.
We're out of time. We're out of time. We're out of time.
We are out of time. Paul, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.